everybody, welcome to the channel today. Today I wanted to talk about the Continental Congresses. These were America's first early governments, and they served during the American War for Independence all the way up until we adopted the Constitution, which we now have today. So there were two different ones of these. First one was convened in 1774. This one was primarily just a beginning. It mainly was focused on talking to the British King, King George, who was punishing the city of Boston for the infamous Boston Tea Party. So that was the main reason for the first one. It was led by a guy named Peyton Randolph, who, fun fact, had just had his 53rd birthday as soon as he arrived. So this Continental Congress, led by Peyton Randolph, drafted what was called the Olive Branch Petition, which was basically just saying, hey, King George, here's what you did wrong, here's why we are complaining, let's make peace. So that was the first Continental Congress. The only other major thing that it did was set a date for when they would come back together and reconvene if the king didn't listen. So that was the first one. The Second Continental Congress is the one that we all think of. This is the one led by John Hancock, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. The Declaration was initially introduced by Richard Henry Lee as a resolution to break away from Great Britain. It was pretty radical at first, and not a lot of states initially supported it. However, over the coming months in early 1776, a lot of states jumped on board, and so Thomas Jefferson was assigned to take up the resolution and write a document. Now, Thomas Jefferson didn't write it alone. He had Ben Franklin, John Adams, as well as two other men, Robert Livingston and Roger Sherman, all helping him write the Declaration. Now, fun fact about the Declaration, the actual Declaration that we see in all the paintings, the grand signing, didn't actually happen. The Declaration was initially written and drafted, and it was sent to John Hancock and the Continental Congress. Only about 10 to 15 people actually signed that initial first Declaration of Independence. John Hancock was one of them. But that initial declaration was sent to a printer named John Dunlap, where about 200 copies were made. Only about 26 of those now survive. But those copies were ultimately sent out to all the delegates, since not everybody was present at the Continental Congress because of timing and weather and events. So it was actually until about late 1777 that all the delegates had signed and all of the signatures had come back so that the final form of the Declaration, with all the signatures, could be drafted and put in and sent to the king. The Continental Congress remained America's government through the rest of the War for Independence and all the way up until the Constitutional Convention, when the Constitution that we now have was established. Under the time of the war, Continental Congress just ruled as a military government as it pleased. But after the war, in order to give some semblance of national unity, the Congress met and constructed the Articles of Confederation. This was a document setting up a loose union of the states, as the word confederacy was termed at the time a league of friendship more. So it wasn't quite a full national government, but it was a close one, which was understandable considering the colonists had just come from a strong national government. They were, at the time, very leery of it. So, under the Continental Congress and under the Articles of Confederation, there were a lot of post-war problems. There was the Shays Rebellion, where, since during the war inflation had run rampant, most farmers and soldiers were bankrupt and hadn't been paid as well, since the Congress didn't have the money to pay them. So the new government had a lot of problems to deal with. And it had a lot of weaknesses, but under the Articles of Confederation, it was able to settle one major issue, and that was the issue of Western expansion at the time. So, before the war, one of the limits that the British had placed on the colonists was banning Western migration past the Ohio River. After the War for Independence, that was a treaty stipulation that the Americans received. So now they had the Northwest Territory from the Ohio River all the way to the Mississippi. So the Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 and was able to establish a form of government for the territory until the territory could be broken up into future states. These states would ultimately turn out to be the states of Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So that was the main primary achievement of the Continental Congress under the Articles of Confederation. During the post-war period, before the Constitutional Convention, the Congress continued to meet in Philadelphia, as they had done throughout the war. The only time that they hadn't met in Philadelphia was when the British temporarily took over Philadelphia. So there you have it, a brief history of the Continental Congresses. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and a subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what you're interested in. And thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you in the next one.